What's going on, everybody? It's Frito here for Your Overwatch. You may have not have noticed because so many of the recent patches have been small and incremental, but I think we are distinctly in a new meta. I was working on this video last week collecting my thoughts, and then I realized that the Overwatch League had their huge Melee tournament over the weekend using the same rule set that's in Ranked. No heroes banned, and they're playing on the live patch, which I think helps formulate what the best players are doing, and what I'll try to do is translate what we should consider as best picks for Ranked for most players as well. First up, I want to note that Brawl is far weaker than it used to be. An entire meta ago, we would have said that Reinhardt, McCree, Mei, Rushdown was simply the best thing you could do all the time, but a culmination of factors, nerfing that comp as well as buffing many other options has shifted it a bit. It still can work sometimes, but you shouldn't expect Reinhardt to be the go-to answer all the time like he was just a few weeks ago. Because start to add up everything. Significant nerfs to Mei repeatedly, and overall stun nerf, which I think hurt that comp the most, nerfing Sleep Dart, Earth Shatter, McCree Flashbang, those things start to add up. But on the other end of things, there was lots of buffs to spam damage characters, and that's where the meta ultimately moved to. Ashe in particular was a character that never really had a home in the hit scan landscape. She was good but not great. Reason being, I think her power budget always allotted for her Viper main rifle to be a bit weaker due to how good TNT was. But what they ended up doing is just buff the Viper repeatedly so that not only did she have the best damage cooldown in TNT, her rifle became as good, if not better, than many other hit scan options, especially when you consider Widowmaker scope got nerfed a while back, and Ashe outranged McCree anyway. On top of this, other spam damage characters got significant buffs. Pharah and Junkrat come to mind. Those are characters we didn't see too much in the Overwatch League because really all they need to fulfill that role is Echo, who has a combination of spam damage as well as very good teamwork to finish kills. I feel like Echo is less of a threat in Ranked though, and scales up a lot better when she has a bit of teamwork to get a target low and then finishing beam on things. Without that teamwork though, I think there is room for other picks to shine. And the last component of all of this is that the Moira Orb nerf went through, meaning that not only are these spam damage characters a bit better and more viable, Ana lost 5 healing and Moira lost 3 seconds on her orb, so all things considered, damage is coming through hot and heavy. And thinking back to how the power has shifted, there isn't a lot of damage denial out of the tanks either, with shields being nerfed, so I think the best way for you to adapt your playstyle to fit into this new meta is realize that cover means more than it maybe ever has. So much so that I would go as far to say that even the Orisa Sigma combination have a different personality in this new landscape. One of the best examples of this, I thought, was when the SF Shock played in the grand final up against Florida Mayhem on the map Sanctum. When Brawl was better, you could commit to the point a bit more, sustain there, cap it, and force the enemy to come to you. Well, now that role is kind of reversed, where both teams are terrified to step toe on point and would much rather set up their crossfires, right? It is common to see the Sigma play with Orisa when they need to fortify a position, but even more common across the entire league, I'd say, is seeing Sigma go on off angles by himself to instead get map control and crossfire damage angles. This is important because it's a very different personality to Double Shield than you may have remembered back when Hanzo and Baptiste were meta. Back then, you stacked up together on corners playing around the lamp. But because lamp is weaker, shields are weaker, you have to be a bit more creative about how you set up. And with that, we've either seen teams commit to the Ashe and protect her, in this case, Rascal going so far as to play Torbjorn, who also is one of those great spam damage options. But dive variants saw success over the weekend as well. Reinhardt Rushdown only really being powerful on the control maps where the enemy doesn't really have much time to set up to craft the perfect fight. The important thing that I want to say about how to adapt your play to this is playing grouped up together is possibly worse than it's ever been in Overwatch due to how much healing and shielding nerfs have gone down. Much more important that you play around cover, and you may even find that either dive or just flanking in general sees much better success, because it's to the point now where yes, Ryan Brawl comps can be strong, but it takes more coordination in my opinion than simply using cover and playing for yourself. because the balance has swung that dividing and conquering with crossfires is stronger than single target focus fire brawling. At different points of Overwatch's history, it has played like this. There's a few core meta components that are holding us back from dive kind of overtaking all of this. The best support surprisingly being Brigitte, who, with so many spam damage options, you may have thought Brig could be punished, but the problem is they reworked Brig to be a better healer, so she doesn't actually have to brawl that much, and she still gets a lot of value. Armor packing a DPS allows them to be very tanky on off angles, which were good anyway. And yeah, it is a bit tricky to get Inspire sometimes, but getting it at all, oddly enough, is probably the best form of AoE healing left, because when you combine all the elements together, right, the meta kind of requires you to spread out a bit, map depending. And not only does Brig have possibly the strongest range heal in the game right now with Armor Pack, Inspire has a massive range as well. And Rally is just hands down the best support ult left in the game. And it's this power level of Brig, yes, does enable dive a bit, but I think counters it more. Meaning that focus firing targets that aren't Brig is very difficult, and she can play in such a way where the actual threats on her team take up the space, and she can be tough to get to when she positions correctly. And now with all that said, I'm just gonna quickly go over an updated tier list for all the heroes. For DPS, I am going to ultimately keep McCree at tier 1 above even Ashe, which might seem kind of crazy, but I think McCree solves more problems for you than Ashe will in ranked. And if you go Ashe, as we saw in the tournament, there's a lot of picks that the enemy can pick that can go harass your team, and Ashe doesn't do much to stop. She has the best stats and will do the most overall damage, but McCree can straight up deny other characters from taking over the game with stun and soft replicate what Ashe can do. Short of that, I do like Torb. Brawlers like Doom Reaper get free picks, but you'll see that there's an interesting almost counter meta tier in tier 2, where a lot of these picks either directly counter something or can dominate some maps. If your enemies start to slow down in an attempt to the double shield that they saw in the Overwatch League, Symmetra is amazing, but in the same token, slow tanks give a lot of space for Pharah to be better. The pros weren't high on her, but I think she's low-key incredible right now. Even better up against opponents that might be playing out of position, especially if you know how to stay on safe angles or play quick enough to dive bomb to finish things. Junkrat moves way up the list, finally off the avoid tier with that super speedy mine buff. The thing that shocked me about his concussion mine speed increase was that not only is it faster and more responsive, it actually goes a lot farther because it's so fast, meaning that there's a lot of areas on maps like Anubis A, for example, you can easily toss a concussion mine up to the high ground perch or interrupt dives from long distance with the boop. Don't underestimate Junk. He's very good right now, especially considering a very pokey playstyle can be the order of the day. The pros would be able to clown on him with hit scans or echo, but if the enemy DPS aren't good enough with those characters, I think Junk can really steal the show. If the enemy goes too sniper heavy, I am putting Genji back in the playable category just because dive is a bit more doable and there are picks out there that Genji can counter. Hanzo's a little bit lower on the list due to how good so many hit scans are, but his mobility and recon arrow is enough to keep him fairly competitive. And the Bastion buffs came through. I don't think we'll ever see him in the Overwatch League, but in ranked, he is pretty nasty. I would put him above characters like Sombra or Soldier, who do make my avoid list because of how little they add to the team. Like, they're the type of picks that everyone else on your team has to play well and you get consistent value, but when there's so many other picks in the game right now that pop off with either tons of pressure damage or straight up pickoffs, these characters are hard to use, so I would say avoid them. On the tank side of things, look out for picking the brawl tanks for a few different reasons. When crossfires or dives are coming in against you, Ryan and Zarya have little choices to make. Make sure you're picking these with characters that are going to be able to have a lot of close range damage or go in with the rush, because if not, they just do very little to protect from off angles or respond to the enemies taking positioning, which is why I actually think in ranked, Winston and Ball, if you know how to play them, and I know a lot of people don't, but are going to be your best bet because they more reliably can adapt to that playstyle, confidently getting the high ground or responding to flanks or off angles. Orisa Sigma otherwise will be the best to run due to their big offense that they provide, as well as ultimates that really lay in the hurt. Consider Roadhog if you are playing a full-on multi-flank comp and your team doesn't need any protection or extra space from you, and you're just allowed to solo the enemy. And D.Va stays in tier 1 because in a lot of cases you may find that even with a Reinhardt, Zarya isn't going to be enough to protect the team. Sure, you're going to be able to get charged from all the damage coming through, but if your team dies, the charge is meaningless. D.Va can play with Rein to keep everybody alive, or is pretty good playing up against Dive. As for supports, the queen of them all is going to be Brigitte, who when min-maxed just provides the most support overall to the team. She can solo counter Dive and turn a lot of the enemy's spam damage into the best ultimate in the game. Ana fits in a variety of comps, making her second best, and I think you really should only consider playing Zenyatta with a Baptiste by his side, which is actually the maximum firepower backline, but also the most susceptible to Dive, in which case you would have to pick Brig. Mercy's power level isn't so much higher with the 5 extra healing, but it can work to pocket either an Ashe or an Echo or any of the spam damage characters really if they're in a good position, getting a lot of work done. Characters you want to be careful about picking are Lucio and Moira though. They're both very powerful individually, but it's just their style of play is a little bit weaker, a little bit more niche, and requires more teamwork now than the other styles that are strong in Overwatch. You may find that rushing your Reinhardt in deep doesn't win the fight as quickly as you're used to, and then before you know it, the enemy's kited you a little bit, has a good angle on you, and one of many crazy damage sources is picking you off or just working your Rein down no matter how much you try to heal him. And that's it for today's video, guys. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out, lets us know that you're enjoying the content. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and be sure to hit the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos go live. Linked in the description is our Twitter where we tweet out news updates and dank memes. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. We'll see you guys next time.